Hello and welcome to another episode of LGOtv Big Talk. And why Big Talk? Because I hate small talk. Now, my guest today is someone who can help you if you've got some big talking that you want to do. Her name is Becky Robinson, and she is the founder and CEO of Weaving Influence, a full service marketing agency that specializes in digital and integrated marketing services and public relations for book authors like me, including business leaders, coaches, trainers, speakers, and thought leaders. Since launching more than 9 years ago, under Becky's leadership, the firm has provided a wide range of services to help clients launch more than 150 books, enabling these authors to build their brands, acquire more business customers, and increase book sales. But she is also the author of her own book called Reach: Create the Biggest Possible Audience for Your Message, Book, or Cause. Now, for those of you who know me right now, you know me as the author of Limitless: How to Ignore Everybody, Carve Your Own Path, and Live Your Best Life. And I sort of stumbled upon this sort of book writing, speaking universe quite accidentally, and had to find my own way through creating Reach. Now, I wish I had this book, because this book is basically the manual. It's the user's manual to you becoming a thought leader. So, Becky, welcome to Big Talk.
It is so great to be here with you, Laura. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, I'm so thrilled. And I had such a good time on your podcast talking about how I worked on launching my own book. So if you have not heard that, people go to Becky Robinson, go to her podcast and check out our conversation, because that's sort of part one of this conversation. But what I want to talk to you about today is the four elements, the four sort of pillars of creating these launch campaigns. But I also want to talk about, before we even do that, how do we get comfortable going out there and launching, like demanding that people pay attention to us, deciding that we deserve, that we should be the one in the spotlight? And I particularly want to have this conversation with you because you've always been the person behind the scenes. You've been the person behind the scenes for 150 authors, thought leaders, speakers, but you had to do it for yourself. So just like, how comfortable or uncomfortable were you doing it for yourself?
Well, it's a good question. I think that my tendency, because I have been promoting others over the years, is always to shine the light on others. It's like something I fall back into, um, completely comfortable pitching everybody else. But at the same time, I think that one of the issues that I notice with people is that they think that promoting a book is all about self promotion. And I actually think that's a myth. And here's why. Promoting a book is not at all about promoting yourself. It's about promoting the value within the book. So if you're a nonfiction author and you've crafted content, likely it's content that you've spent your life learning, or it's content that you've spent your career studying, or it's content at the very least that you've spent time researching and pouring into. So when you get to the place of having this artifact, or, this product called a book, you know that the book contains value. And so, if you can reframe and really think about, as I'm promoting the book, I'm promoting the value that this can bring to the lives of the people who read it. And if you can stay really focused on the outcomes that those people can achieve. So, for your book, for example, Laura, you want people to get rid of self limiting beliefs. You want them to know that they can be themselves, be real, be authentic. And so, as you're promoting your book, you're really promoting this different kind of life that people can have. And so one of the ways we can get out of our own way, or, emerge from the shadows to promote our own work, is to realize that we're really actually promoting the value that our work brings to others.
Yeah, that is a challenge that I have had. So for 15 years, I ran an executive search firm, and I had no problem pitching my firm, pitching the work, pitching my people, pitching our cause, pitching our mission, pitching our brilliance, pitching all of it. But the minute I sold that firm and I had to go out and like pitch myself as a speaker, pitch myself as an author, I it was like I couldn't string a sentence together. I just couldn't do it. And somebody one time telling me, and I think it might have been our mutual friend David Burkus, actually, who told me I needed to say hello to you on this podcast.
Hi, David.
Hi, David. I think he was the one who said, "You're not pitching yourself. You're pitching your message. You're pitching your lesson." I was like, "Oh, okay. That's that changes things. That's a little different." But do you find that this is pretty universal with the thought leaders that you work
Oh,
with, or is it like women, or
Hmm.
is it like is it endemic to one type of person, or is it just pretty much people who are used to standing behind the cloak of their ideas or
You
their
know,
firm?
I think that's an interesting question. I hear it all the time. I do think that there are times that I connect with a certain kind of ego, and whether that's male or female, it could be both.
Mm.
And, there are certain personalities that crave the spotlight, that want to be out there front and center. But I would say, most authors that I've met, most thought leaders who I've met, they will be quick. The first thing they want to say is, well, I'm not self-promotional. I'm not a
Uh-huh.
marketer. Marketing gets such a bad rap, you know? And so like I'm an accidental marketer. It's not anything I ever studied in college or anything. I learned it by doing it. But I really want to help reframe for people what marketing is about. And it's about planting seeds of value that can make a difference in the world, and really not about, you could make it all about you, but I think it works best when you make it all about the message. And of course, you want to be a great messenger for the message, and people will connect to you personally. Of course, Laura, I'm sure that people are drawn to the brand of LGO, your presence on the stage. And there is some element of that we have to be willing to show up as our true and authentic selves, realize that people will be drawn to that. And then, once we have that audience or that memorability, then we have the chance to share that valuable message.
It's funny that you say that. In 2019, my friend Erin Gargan King, who's a speaker and an author, I think you also know, she pulled me aside one day and she's like, Laura, she's like, I love it when you just rant. Like when you just go off about something and rant. It's amazing. She's like, how come you're not ranting on stage? She's like, you clearly have a script. You've clearly memorized it. You're like going through your talking points. Why don't you just go out and just give him the full LGO? And I was like, I don't know who that is. Like, what are you talking about? And so we made a pact because she was like, I'm better when I rant too. And I think I should just go out there and do it. So we made a pact that it was going to be like hashtag rant 2020. And we were just going to like go out and just like be us, like fully us on stage. And then COVID, right? So no stages, no events, no ranting. And I finally got back on a big stage about 2 months ago in front of 5,000 people. And I just let it rip for 60 minutes. And I'll tell you, I got my first standing ovation. And I think it's because they did connect. Like I was actually just me. I was like clearly authentic and I was embodying my message. So I'm sort of curious, do you ever have authors that come to you and like they don't kind of embody their message, or there's like a dissonance between what they've written and who they are or who they want to present
Oh,
outwardly? Is that difficult?
it is. It is. And I want to be careful how I say this, although maybe I should just be upfront about it. In my company, we joke around that sometimes people write the book they need to read.
I wrote the book I needed to read. Everyone's like, why'd you write Limitless? I'm like, because it didn't exist and I needed the advice. And I wrote my way. And frankly, my next book, Wonder Hell, is the same thing. I'm like writing my way through the therapy of what I need in this moment of my life. I'm not offended at all about that. I think we all do that.
Well, and I can't wait to read Wonder Hell, by the way. I'm so anticipating your new book. I guess the reason why I was worried that I may offend someone is that, most of the books that we've read are business leadership books. And so if you're reading a book about servant leadership, you certainly hope that the person who wrote it is going to live it out. And I will say, of course, I've worked with Ken Blanchard. He lives it out. We supported Cheryl Batchelder, who was the CEO of Popeyes, who writes about servant leadership. She
Mhm.
certainly lives it out. But along the journey with 150, 200 authors that we've met, there definitely are those times where we scratch our head and we think, like, did you read your book?
Exactly. Exactly. Well, and I think I think we see that sometimes with people where when they set goals for themselves and these goals are like look good goals, like they look good on the wall, but they're not really their own goals. So as you're working with authors, do you have some of them come to you and they're like, I need this to be a New York Times bestseller? And then are you like, well, okay, why? What will that do for your business? Is that like that's a look good goal, but does it actually matter to why you're writing the book?
Yeah, I have heard that many, many, many times. And I think there's such a gap at times between what's realistic for especially a first time author to achieve. And it's just not possible. So I meet a lot of people and I find myself in the position of like, really educating them on the reality of what the publishing world is like, the reality of what it means to be a New York Times bestseller, and then also trying to get people back to the heart of, what's the job. I just recorded a podcast yesterday with our mutual friend Whitney Johnson, and we were talking about this jobs to be done framework that was started by Clayton Christensen. And so the idea of like, well, what's the job the book is supposed to do for you? And I think that if we focus on those look good goals, as you call them, we may miss the bigger job that the book is meant to do. And, like for me, the job I want my book to do is I want it to put my ideas out there in a way that's more scalable, to give people like realistic view of what it takes to grow, reach for a message, book, or cause. And so there's that kind of functional job to be done of to share the ideas in a way that's clear and understandable. There's also the emotional job to be done. And let's be honest, those of us who write books write them partly because it stems from a childhood dream. I don't know if it was like that for you, Laura, but for me, I grew up as a bookworm, a reader. I always had my head in a book. Well, of course, I would dream of having my own name on one and have it on the library shelf and have it on the bookstore shelf. So I think it's good to differentiate between what are those kind of functional goals that we want our book to achieve, and then what's really just the emotional experience that we hope to gain.
Yeah, so that's very that's a great example because your book is basically a fancy business card, right? Your book is like a long pitch presentation. People, you're giving everybody all the science, right? Like I firmly believe, and this is how I ran my last company, that the science is available for free everywhere on the internet, right? You can find the 10-step program, you can find the 15-point plan, you can find every blueprint you possibly need. It's all here in your book, right? How to do it is all here in your book. People aren't hiring you for the science. They can find the science for free, or they can find it for, what's the price of this book?
1895, I
1895,
think.
right? They can find it for 1895. But they hire you for the art, right? They can find the science, but they hire you for the art, and they hire you because maybe they don't have time or the expertise to, do the science as fully as it needs to be. My book, on the other hand, I'm not trying to sell any consulting at all. I'm not trying to sell any business out of it. I just want to sell keynotes, right? I spent 20 years in the deliverables business. I don't want any more deliverables. So you and I both have books, completely different goals for them. And I think that idea of figuring out where you're going is so smart before you get started, right? Because you can say, like, I'm going to Seattle, but like until you decide you're going to Seattle, you don't know if it's smarter to fly or to walk or to take a bus or how you're going to get there. So when authors come to work with you, are they normally, do they already have the book done and it's in print and it's about to come out and they're like, oh no, now I got to promote it? Or do you talk to them even in the developmental stage as they're putting the book together?
Sure. Well, it ranges. My favorite is when the author is planning ahead. There's nothing worse than getting an email that says, "Hey, can you help me launch my book? It's coming out next week." Like, well,
No.
in an ideal world, we would have 4 to 6 months to plan and
Hmm.
execute a well-conceived launch plan that maps to that author's goals, that maps to their budget and time and all of that. But we do actually partner with people all along the journey. And one of the things I talk about, I think it's in the appendix of my book, is that basically at any point in time, you're in one of like 4 phases related to marketing a book, even if you haven't written the book yet. So when you start to conceive of an idea or you think you want to write a book, you're in what I call the building phase. And actually, that's the most powerful time because if you can build connections and contacts way before you need them, then likely you develop reciprocal relationships that,
Hmm.
you can give and give to other people before you need to ask for any help for yourself. So if I
Yes.
remember, one of the things that stood out to me about your launch campaign for Limitless, Laura, is that it was your network that showed up that
Hmm.
helped propel you to your Wall Street Journal bestseller status. And it's the fact that you poured into that network over 2 decades or 3 decades so that people were ready to show up for you when your time came. So, for those who might be out there who are thought leaders, who are creating content, if you don't have a book in mind yet, now is the time to be as generous as you can to grow your network, not to get some outcome later that so that you can ask people for help, but to enjoy those relationships, to be able to build strong bonds. And then when the time comes to launch, you'll be abundantly surprised by the way your network shows up for you. So that building phase is the most important. And we do work with people, at all stages, way before their book comes out. We don't like really do any developmental editing exactly, but I certainly meet people when they're at the point of having a book proposal to shop around. They maybe need to beef up their marketing plan to be able to attract a traditional publisher or, to present a marketing plan to their hybrid publisher, whatever kind of publishing choice they are taking, we can help them really at any point in time on that journey.
So you mentioned traditional publishers and hybrid publishers. For people who don't know the difference between them, do you want to give us a quick overview?
I sure would. So, traditional publishers, if you think about the big five New York publishers, those are kind of the gold standard of traditional publishing. And most of the time, in order to attract one of those top five publishers, you need to be represented by an agent. There are also, many, many independent publishers. And the difference between a traditional publisher and a hybrid publisher, in both cases, you're connecting with a professional team who can bring your book to market. And the difference is whether or not you're putting money up front, as you do in the case of a hybrid publisher, or whether the publishing company is taking a risk and investing in you as an author without your own financial contribution. So that's the key differentiator between those two different publishing paths.
Yes, yes. So I published Limitless with a hybrid publisher, mostly because I was like, I'm a nobody. I literally do not have a mailing list, let alone a big mailing list. Like I did not have, not even like I had like 12 people. I did not have a mailing list. And I figured any traditional publisher was, even if they gave me a team, was not going to give me their A team or even their B team. I'd be lucky if I got the D team, right? So I was gonna have to hire all my own people anyway. So I was like, you know what? I might as well just take a risk on myself. And I just sold my company. So I had some cash on hand and I paid to have Limitless published. And then I spent, and people are sort of shocked by, because it's a beautiful book. Like this hybrid publisher makes really nice books. People who, who like Tiffany Bova, for example, who's, written, Growth IQ and has sold a bajillion copies, Wall Street Journal. She called me up and she was like, I just realized that your book is a hybrid. She's like, I had no idea. She's like, I thought it was like a big book. And so people who are outside of like the inside baseball world that we're in don't actually know the difference. But when inside baseball, so many of us spend so much time like hemming and hawing about whether or not we should do it. And should I get a big five? And what does that mean? And I spent a lot of time really stressing about that for Wonderhell until I had a conversation with Amy Cuddy, who said, look, people use traditional publishers to get credibility, speaking gigs, and get on lists. She's like, you've already got that. There's no reason to do it. And so it's really, for me, a bit of like a business model, right? And then how much control do you have? So you look at somebody like Michael Bungay Stanier, whose book somewhere around How to Begin is somewhere around here. But he uses Page Two, which is a hybrid publisher. And all throughout the book, he does these little things that actually help with the marketing. So he has like inserts, and he asks people to do Amazon reviews. He, has QR codes where people can download things, where you can get their email addresses. I mean, it's super smart. And I don't know that he would have been able to do that with a traditional publisher necessarily.
I think it depends upon the publisher, but certainly when you choose traditional publication above hybrid publishing, you are giving up some creative control, and I experienced that. However, I will say I do have those QR codes throughout my book at the end of every chapter. See if I can find one for you that links to additional resources, and again, is helping me grow my email list.
Oh,
So,
very smart.
yes.
So I have my my second draft due to my publisher at the end of this month, or sorry, at my editor at the end of this month. So I think I'm going to start doing that with some QR codes. That's a good tip. Okay, so you have the building phase, the working phase, the launching phase, and the advancing stage. And I remember when this book came out, you did a series of podcasts every single day where you talked about what was happening. And I remember the one you were like, well, now we're in the working phase, and it's called the working phase because it's a lot of work.
Yes, it's true. I do
Yeah.
say that.
And
Thank you
so
for
talk to
listening.
us about the working phase.
Sure. So, in the working phase, basically what you're doing is you're putting together all the resources and relationships that you want to mobilize at launch. So, in the case of my book, one of the things that was important to me is to get a lot of Amazon reviews early on for social proof. And you referenced Amazon reviews. So, here's what I found over launching 150 books over 10 years. In order to get Amazon reviews, you need to give away about 4 times as many books as you want to have reviews in the first month. So,
Mhm.
for me, the working phase involved signing books, putting together collateral packages to make the packages fun to open. And we sent over 400 copies of my book. It was ready pre publication around March 16th, and then my book came out April 19th. And so it was this hard work of every single night after my day job. I'd be, set up with this long table in my living
Hmm.
room, putting these packages together and personalizing them. The other thing that we were doing in the working phase really is pitching media, to line up media to get a lot of momentum at launch. So one thing authors don't think about when they're not planning ahead is, if you want a lot of media in that launch week, you have to start working for it 4 to 6 months before, because podcasters, people with live shows like yours, you're booking out farther beyond the launch, which is
Yes.
why, my book's been out 2 months. Here I am with you. I'm so grateful for that. Actually, that does help, because you need to sustain momentum past launch. So it's okay if you don't have all the media in the first week, but it is helpful to have a lot of activity during that week to give you momentum. So during the working phase, you're not only, working to secure media, you're not only working to get books out, but also one of the things that authors can do is to create graphics and other social media posts to make it easier for your network to share your book. And so that's part of what you're creating in the working phase. And it is intense. About 2 to 3 weeks before my book came out, I thought, Becky, you do this for a living. Like, didn't you know that there was going to be a lot of work to do? Like, I had known for more than a year that my book was coming, but it doesn't matter how far you plan in advance, you still get kind of caught at the end with all those last minute tasks.
Absolutely. And in that package, when you send the book, we have a question. When you send the book, do you ask them for a review when you send it, or do you ask them to post a selfie with the picture, or do you ask them to, tell people about it or make introductions, or sort of all the above?
Yeah, so there's a variety of asks. And what I would say is, I divided that shipment in my mind into three groups of people. So the first group is the group that I wanted to send them a book no matter what, no strings attached. They were people I interviewed for the book, or people who endorsed the book. And I had a special letter that went with their books, just expressing gratitude without really any call to action.
Hmm.
I did give them information, I think, at the end of the letter of like, here are ways you could get involved. But it wasn't like a really heavy ask. So that's the first group of people. And I would say, if you're watching this now or later and you'd like to see examples of the communication, you can shoot me an email, becky@weavinginfluence.com, and I'd be glad to send you the Word doc that contains the letters that went with the book, just as an example. So the second group I had was my formal launch team. And, some people out there in the world are used to participating as members of a launch team. And with the launch team, the ask for the Amazon review is embedded in the deal. It is a transactional type of relationship where you say, okay, sign up to be a part of my launch team, and in exchange, you're agreeing to leave an Amazon review, share on social, etc. So there's a different kind of tone to the letter, like not in a mean way of like, hey, I'm giving you my book, you better leave me a review, but it's like, hey, as a part of my launch team, I'm so glad you're participating. I appreciate your support. It's my hope that if you enjoy the book, you're going to leave an honest review. Now, what I've heard is that some, like more well known thought leaders, actually have an extra added ask for their launch teams. So I don't know if you're familiar with John Gordon. He has multiple best selling books over decades.
Yeah, you tell his story in the book.
Oh, I
Yeah.
do. So John actually, when he goes out for a launch team to his list, he will require proof of a pre-order to be on the
Yes.
launch team. And so typically the transaction is, hey, show me that you pre-ordered the book. I'll get you a digital copy or possibly a print copy. And then you're agreeing that you'll leave an Amazon review and share on social. For someone like me, a first-time author, yes, sure, I have an email list of about 17,000 people, but I don't quite have the social capital to say, hey, to be on my launch team, you have to pre-order. So what we tried was, we asked people to consider pre-ordering the book. And so at
Yes.
the top of our launch team form, we said, sign up to be a part of the launch team. We're going to get you an advanced copy of the book. And to help this book get momentum, could you consider a pre-order? And, we had about 300 people on my formal launch team. And I'm thinking fewer than 10% actually pre-ordered the book at that point. I know after that, many, when they got the book, they enjoyed the book, they bought copies for others. But I wasn't really ready to say, hey, to be on my launch team, you must buy a book.
Yes. Yes.
So, three categories of pre-pub distribution: kind of just people who helped you that you want to gift the book to, no strings attached; the people on the launch team, and it's more of a transactional, I'll give you a book, you'll give me a review; and then the third group for me was, trusted, close friends and colleagues. And it was a much softer ask. It was like, hey, I'd like to get you a copy of my book. if you find value, would you consider leaving a review? And I kind of softened the language for those folks.
Hmm.
These are people I've known for a long time. I know they're busy. Maybe they have their own blog, their own book, whatever. And so I wanted to make it more of like a soft touch, in the event that you find value and you'd like to leave a review, I'd appreciate it. So what I found though is that no matter who the people are that you get your book to, what we see reliably is about 10 to 40% who will leave a review in the first month. So let me tell you how it worked for me. We did about 400 pre-pub copies, and now this is what, June 14th, and I have 91 Amazon reviews. So I
Hmm.
didn't quite make that 25% yet. And the other thing that I didn't do that I coach others to do is to do some individual follow up with the people who have gotten your book, to try to drive additional reviews. And I have not carved out the time to do that yet. But it definitely works. I just, you know, a thousand things.
I mean, like people are also really busy. It's very funny. I had somebody whose book came out about 6 months ago, and he asked me to write a blurb for it, and I was like, "Sure, awesome, I'll write a blurb." He sent me his book, the digital copy. I read the whole thing because I only blurb books that I can read. I wrote the blurb, and then his book came out, and then after book came out, he sent me back the blurb, and he's like, "Hey, here's the blurb you wrote for my book. Would you copy and paste it into an Amazon review?" Which made it really easy for me, and I was like, "Sure, no problem." And I was like, "By the way, have you reviewed my book yet on Amazon? Because that would be awesome." And he wrote back and he's like, "Oh yeah, let me go do that now." And it was like, this guy's had me on his podcast. He's read my book. He's a fan of mine. He talks about it everywhere. And yet he hadn't done it. Right. So it's like people just, and he's an author and he knows how valuable it is. And he's asking me to do it. So it's like people are just busy, but it was hard because I took it personally when somebody wouldn't write an Amazon review. And I'm like, maybe it's because they hate the book. They don't. They're just not thinking about us. They're busy thinking about themselves. But it's really hard. So that personal follow-up, like we feel like we're a pain to do it. But like for Whitney Johnson is a perfect example. So Whitney asked me to leave an Amazon review. She followed up personally. She asked me to do it. I left one and then I wrote back and I'm like, "Hey, by the way, would you leave one for me?" And she was like, "Oh, sure, no problem. I'm traveling this week, but I'll do it when I get back next week." And then 3 days ago or 4 days ago into my inbox pops this beautiful like 4-paragraph review from Whitney Johnson, right? Like one of the top leaders and the thinkers in the world. Amazing. I just had to ask.
Yeah, and I think for authors, asking about Amazon reviews seems more uncomfortable than asking for other things.
It is
I
so
see so
uncomfortable.
much resistance.
Yes. Yeah. So how do we get past that?
Well, I think understanding how valuable and important it can be for the life of your book. So, do an experiment on any given day. Go to Amazon and look at the top 20 bestsellers. There's a few things that you're going to learn from looking at them. One is that most of them have Amazon reviews numbering in the thousands. So,
Hmm.
you mentioned Michael Bungay Stanier. If you look at his book, The Coaching Habit, he has 7,000, maybe last time I checked, Amazon reviews.
Yes.
Now, you have to start somewhere. And so one of the reasons why it's important at the beginning to get that kind of baseline level of Amazon reviews is, first of all, it shows people, hey, there are reviews. It might trigger for them. I need to review this book too. And the other is that when people come to your Amazon page or whatever online retailer they're on, they are going to use the reviews to help them decide whether or not your book is for them.
Yes.
And so the more reviews you have, the more possibilities that specific areas of connection will pop for a reader who takes the time to read those reviews. And you're never going to get to the 7,000 Amazon reviews if you don't first start with 10 or 25 or 50. So authors
Right.
will ask me, hey, well, what should my goal be? Well, you know, what do you think that you can create? If I know that an author is just starting out or has a smaller network, I'll say, well, why don't you set a goal to get 10?
Hmm.
If you have 0, a goal to get 10 is great. I worked with an author. I don't think that she would mind me mentioning her name. Her name is Karen Baum Gordon, and she wrote a very, very personal memoir about her father's life after the Holocaust. He survived the Holocaust. Um, and when I met with her, her book had been out several months and she had very few Amazon reviews. And so I challenged her, Karen, I know you said you got, hundreds of copies out to friends and family when the book came out. Would you just do an experiment and email some and see what happens?
Yeah.
And right away, she exponentially increased the number of Amazon reviews and she couldn't believe how easy it was. And this is how we just get in our own way. We have this content of value that could inspire someone or educate someone or, maybe entertain someone if we're writing fiction. And yet we kind of stand in the way of our own success when we're not willing to make those asks of people who honestly most of the time are so happy to help us. They just need a little gentle reminder.
I mean, mostly people just don't even know how they can help. When my book came out, I sent out not just an email about asking people to, pre-order the book and to join the launch team, but I actually told them why it was so important. Like, the launch team matters because how the book is pre-sold, those numbers tell stores whether or not they should stock the book and where they should put it, and they should give it better real estate. And I had so many friends that were like, I had no idea. I didn't know. I didn't know it was so important. Of course I will do that. I will always pre-buy any book anybody ever tells me about now, because I had no idea until I went through it. And I probably had a year of other friends asking me to join launch teams before I did that. So I think it's really understanding there's a lot of inside baseball here that I think you would not know. And if you are waiting for people to know it, to have ESP, to understand the game that you're in when they're not even, playing sports at all, like, it's really hard. So let me, I want to go back to the framework in your book. So you have a 4-part framework of value, consistency, longevity, and generosity. So let's talk through each of these. If you are an author, you've got your book that's coming out, where do you start?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So we call these the 4 commitments in the book. And I love the word commitment because it shows the power that it's a choice that we can make. And, I meet people who have all different points of view about online marketing. We talked earlier about how people don't want to promote themselves. So there really is a choice that we make that we want to show up in online spaces with our book, our message, our idea, our cause, whatever it is. Today we've been mostly talking about authors. And the first choice or the first commitment is one to show up with value. And, what I'll say about that is that value isn't the same for everyone. And so part of identifying the value that we hope to share in online spaces or the value that we hope to share through our book is to be really clear about who our audience is and who our audience is not, and to realize that we're not necessarily creating for everyone. But the more we can be specific about the people we are creating value for, the more likely we are to identify and find them. I've recently been using this example. It's a bit of a vulnerable example, but I think it really helpfully illustrates the importance of really knowing who your audience is. So back in February, my 15-year-old daughter was diagnosed with autism, which, it's a very strange thing to get diagnosed that late. And so as a result, I started to look for content. Now, 5 years earlier, if I found a thought leader who was creating content about autism, I would have would have passed me by. It would
Mm-hmm.
not have been valuable to
Mm-hmm.
me. But in this place of this new diagnosis, wanting to help my daughter as much as I could, of course, any thought leader creating content about that is of value to me. So when you're trying to really think through, understand that whatever your topic is, there is a certain audience out there for it. Um, the other thing about value is that the commitment to value really is a commitment to show up with value, to share content regularly, which is where the second commitment of consistency comes in. So you might have value, it might be all stuck in your head, or maybe you've only ever written one blog post.
Mm-hmm.
In order to grow an audience and create the impact that we want, we have to make a commitment to show up consistently. So let's use Whitney Johnson for an example. We were fangirling about her a while ago. I happen to notice she's at about 270 of her Disrupt Yourself podcasts. Now, that's only one of the types of content that she creates and shares consistently. So one of the reasons why she's successful with that is because she continues to show up over time with value on her core topics. So to create reach, to create a growing audience, to create lasting impact, there has to be that consistency of showing up. And I know you, Laura, for example, show up every single Tuesday with your newsletter in my inbox. And so that's a consistency that builds trust. I know that apart from some weird travel emergency or illness, I know that I can count on inspirational ideas to challenge me, stories from you, and it's you in my inbox every week. So that
And all of my
consistency.
typos. It's how you know.
Oh, I never noticed a single typo.
I had a newsletter a few months ago where I was like, I know that last newsletter had like 6 typos in it, but this is how you know it's me and not some, consultant or some bot who's writing them. It's just me. I literally wake up on Tuesday morning and I'm like, what am I thinking about today? What do I know to be true today? And that's what I send out. And so it's just probably, we're going to get to content repurposing later because I want to talk about that. But I probably have a lot to learn on the actual like strategy about content. But yes, it
Oh,
is me. It is me showing up.
sure. And, I'm the same way. My newsletter goes out on Fridays. It's not always Friday morning because I often have like a full day of calls on
Mm-hmm.
Friday. Sometimes it's Thursday. Sometimes it's like Friday at noon and my team is pinging me, "Where's the email? Where's the email?" And I'm like furiously typing it out. So
Yes.
that consistency is critically important. So the third of the four commitments is longevity, and this is really really important. Dory Clark had a book called The Long Game. So if you think about longevity, think about the long game. The idea is that you cannot create a large audience
Yeah.
and impact overnight. It's like a long term investment. Yay, you've got all the books
Yep.
at the
I got all
ready.
the books. They're all here.
This is an expensive live. People are going to go buy Whitney Johnson and they're going to buy your book if they haven't, and my book.
Absolutely. Where
They're
a
going to buy The
disrupt
Long
yourself is
Game.
somewhere around here. Oh, it's over there. Yep.
Yeah. So at any rate, longevity is critical. A story I like to use is Brene Brown. Everybody thinks that she, catapulted to her success and renown with her viral TED Talk. She actually was working 10 years before that. She's been working 10 years since that. It's her long term adding of value to
Yes.
audiences that creates the impact that she's creating. So, the fourth of the four commitments is generosity. And this is one we don't often expect. When we choose to show up in online spaces, we have to give away a lot of content. We have to give away a lot of who we are, our time, our energy. And I want to say that I think true authenticity is one of the ways that we can be most generous with our online presence, because when you can be real about who you are, it gives people access to you. It's like an openness of sharing of yourself. So generosity is one that people don't always expect, but one that I found to be critically important with all the thought leaders that I studied in putting the book together.
Generosity is really interesting because I've had, I can't tell you how many people I've had come up to me over the years and say, I would love to do what you do, Laura, but I'm just more of a private person. I'm not comfortable sharing everything about me. And I say to them, like, well, what's my husband's name? What are my kids' names? Do you know where I live? Do you know what kind of car I drive? Do you like they and they're like, I don't. And I'm like, exactly. Like I am 100% open with about 60% of my life. But the rest of it is pretty private, right? Like I did post about my
Mhm.
kids, the birthday this past week,
Birthdays.
but
Mhm.
yeah, but I didn't, my husband, I didn't, he's very private, right? His birthday was last week also. Like, I think that, you make decisions about what is part of your public persona and what is part of your story that you want to share, but you don't have to share every single piece of it. I mean, even Brene Brown, who, talks about vulnerability and openness, I am 100% sure that we are not getting 100% of her story all the time. And she herself said, you write from the scars, not from the wounds. So I think we hear things from her later, right? Like I went through two
Right.
massive health issues over the course of the last 18 months. And one of them, I knew the outcome would be fine. So I talked about it live and in the moment. The other one, I wasn't so sure. So I didn't talk about it till it was over. And then I was super open about it. And people were like, oh my God, I had no idea. You're so brave. And I'm like, well, no, if I was brave, I would have told you about it while it was happening. But I think that we all can find a place that where we are comfortable and then show up as that person. And I think it's the consistency and the honesty and the transparency as that person that I think is really important. And I just wanted to say, like, I just, for anyone who's listening who's like, oh, I don't know, I can't do it, it's, you can, right? We can all do it.
Yeah, you can choose what you want to share about. And I know that one of the reasons I was drawn to you, Laura, and I like am kind of goofy, and I'm wearing this t-shirt that says 1971
Woo!
because it happens to be the year that we were both born. But the more you can share specific items about yourself that you're comfortable sharing, like your age, for example. Hey, we're both 51. That helps you become memorable to others.
Yes.
I know I was first drawn to you when you were talking about running marathons, because I love to run too. And so, as we make choices, we're going to attract an audience to us, who understands us and resonates with us. And it's those things that we choose to share that will build the audience. And those things that we need to keep private are okay too.
And it's such a hard thing that, so for Wonder Hell, my next book, it's about this moment where you've achieved a little bit of success and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is exciting. It's like, it's wonderful. And also, I've never been so exhausted and stressed out and full of anxiety and doubt and uncertainty and envy and burnout in my entire life. It's kind of hell. It's wonderful and it's hell. It's wonder hell. And everyone has experienced that, whether you're just starting off in your career and you've like just crushed the first project or presentation, or you like exited a major company. And I'm having a really hard time answering the question, who is this book for? Because it can be for so many different types of people. It's not for like the 51-year-old marathon runner who's, an entrepreneur running her own business, right? Us. It's for so many different people. And that challenge, and I would imagine you probably have a lot of authors when you ask them, who's the book for? That's like, it's for everyone. So how do we, our instinct is to say it's for everyone, let's open the tent wide, when in fact narrowing the doorway to the tent actually gets more people into it, which is sort of counterintuitive.
Sure. Well, so what I'm hearing is it sounds like at any given point in time, there are people who need your book right now.
Yes.
So I think sometimes, rather than trying to narrow from everyone to a specific demographic, niche, whatever, we can think about who is this book for right now. So like for my book, if you're writing a book a year from now or 2 years from now, or you're building a thought leadership brand because you want to write a book in a decade, then my book is for you.
Right.
A person who has no such aspirations to grow an online presence, my book is not for them. And I got a kick out of like my mother, who is 79 years old, would every week I'd call her and she'd say, "Oh, I'm on chapter 4. I'm on chapter 5. Mom, you don't have to read my book. It's not really for
It's
you."
not for you, Mom.
So
Yeah.
maybe one way, Laura, is to think about who your book is not for. Like
Mm-hmm.
one way to get it, who is your book for, is like, well, it's not for someone who's not in that wonder hell experience.
Right. Right. It's not for people who are sort of complacent and who are satisfied and who are happy. Like I'm Jewish, and there's a word in Yiddish that dibik, and you talk about somebody who has like a hungry dibik, or like a complacent dibik, right? You have like a little one or a big one, and that's sort of like the battery that's inside you that burns, that's hungry, that wants more, right? It's like this always feed me. And there are some of us who have a big dibbick, who like sit at lunch and we're like, where are we going to dinner? Or you're like on vacation on the beach and you're like, where are we going to go in the winter? You're like, I always want to, like, you're planning and you're thinking and you're going and you're like, I can't wait to do the next thing. And the other people are like, namaste. This is awesome. I'm here and present in the moment. And both of those people are amazing, but I am one of them and not the other. Now, the joke is that I'm married to the other. So, you get two people in a room. They marry each other. Good luck. But I think it's figuring out like who are those people, and like what do they read and what do they look at, and who are the people who they find. So when you're in that working phase and you're targeting the podcasts and the media, and you're putting together all of the letters that you're going to send out and the pre-launch campaign, and you're recruiting people and all the sort of social media shareables and all of that stuff, are you also looking at sort of, for lack of a better word, your competition, right? Like who's written books like this, or who has similar audiences, and sort of where are they showing up and how are they showing up? Or do you advise people to sort of do their own thing?
Well, I mean, I think it's both. So I one of the things I like to remember is that we don't really necessarily have competition. So if you're writing a book on a certain topic, chances are, if you can see the other people who are writing similar books, I have this abundance mentality. People don't just buy one book on a topic.
Right.
And so there is this value in seeing what others are doing, collaborating with them, partnering with them even. In fact, I want to give a shout out to Pam Slim. Pam did a keynote last week at a conference that I organized about her book, The Widest Net.
They're all right here. I've interviewed all of these people on the podcast, so they're all sitting here in front of me.
That's so funny. I love Pam. I loved, her concept of the widest net. And one of the things that she really talks about is like, what's the ecosystem around your book? Well,
yes.
Pam is in my ecosystem, so I think, to your question, definitely look at what others are doing. Sometimes I get ideas for podcasts to pitch because I see a colleague and they've been on a podcast and I think, well, I'd like to be on that podcast too.
Well, and they can
So
recommend you.
absolutely. So certainly look at what others are doing and use that to inform your strategy. But, not in the way I think, we can get in this place and get trapped by comparing ourselves to others. So I could
Mm.
compare myself, for example, to Pam Slim. Well, so for Pam, it's her third book. And so, like, it's important for me to remember, okay, well, it's her third book. It's my first book. And so I kind of have to play my own game and do my own thing. And, I can admire and admire her and think ahead to, okay, well, if I write my second and third book, what might I experience? But it's also unpredictable. And also the world has been changing. I think Pam published her first book in 2009, and how we market books and attract audiences is so different from 2009 to 2022. It's way more crowded, for one thing.
Well, yeah, that's true. Also because of those hybrid publishers that I use. So yeah, it is much more crowded, and it's funny because I think getting people to buy your book is a challenge. Getting people to read your book is another separate challenge, and it's hard to get people to recommend your book if they haven't bought your book and read your book, right?
Yes, it's
Challenging.
true.
It's
Well,
challenging.
and as far as like getting people to buy your book, I always tell authors, like, you have to ask people to buy your book or they're not going to buy it.
Hmm.
And that's another place where we're reluctant and they want to be like soft about it. Like, hey, my book is out this week. It's not enough to say, hey, my book is out this week. My book is out this week. The way that you can help me get this message to the world is to buy a copy, buy one and give one to someone else. Like, eh, the launch week is the one time that you can like have people put up with the fact that you're going to ask them to buy and buy and buy.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
you knew that I did a podcast every day of my launch week. I also sent out an email every day of my launch week. And the reason is because you need that repeated ask. People get busy and they don't follow through. So and they may not open all the emails. So if you send more emails and ask more often, then you'll increase the likelihood that you'll sell books. And I will say that when I look at my numbers, I'm still depressed. So even given everything that I did, selling books is so hard.
So hard. It is so hard. And it is, I was meeting with somebody yesterday and he's like, "So why do you write books? You can make a lot of money?" And I'm like, "That's cute." Yeah. Like you don't make money from writing books. You make money from what you do with the book, which is why that question of what do you want the book to do for you is so very important. But
Yes, you
yeah,
make money speaking.
yes. That's how I make my money is speaking, right? You make your money helping, with people who buy your book and like, this is amazing. This is a lot. She should do this for me. I mean, that's the thing, right? You want people to get like just enough into your book that they're like, she really knows what she's talking about. I should just hire her. That's the way to do
Exactly.
it. That's the way to do it. So as you mentioned, we've been talking a lot about books, but it's also about your message, it's about your cause. A lot of people have maybe TED Talks or TEDx's, or they have articles that they're publishing in their industry rags, whatever that might be. If somebody has that type of thing, right, they're starting to get some sort of recognition, some sort of social proof that they are an expert in a thing. Maybe they want to write a book, maybe that's down the line, maybe they don't want to, but they know that they can use this celebrity endorsement or this talk or this whatever to raise money for their cause, to get people to vote for them, to get people to be on board with their message. Where do they start?
Well, you have to start first with your own website. Because that's the place that you own and control online. And some people
Hmm.
say, well, why can't it just be my LinkedIn profile or can it be my Instagram profile?
Yeah.
You don't own those places. So the first step is really to, own your own domain. And if you can get your name, BeckyRobinson.com is really easy to remember if you know who I am.
Yes.
So starting with your website, it's the place that you own and control. And from there, in 2022, I still think that email marketing is the most effective way to get your message out. And so to start to build a permission based email list where people see that you have value to offer, they're giving you permission to stay in touch with them and grow that email list as big as you can, as fast as you can. And commit yourself to sending content on a cadence that you can sustain. So, you heard both Laura and me say that we have a weekly email. Not many people want to commit to a weekly email, and that is okay. So maybe you start with a twice a year email, you start with a quarterly email, you start with a monthly email, whatever you know that you can reliably deliver upon. And that's a way of continuing to grow relationships with the people who would choose to subscribe to hear from you. So those are really the first two places to start. From there, you definitely want to create a credible social presence because social media platforms are the place to find and form relationships. And and to that, you want to make sure that you add content marketing where you're sharing content of value, typically on your own website. And those are what I call the Reach Framework fundamentals. Those are the four things you need to pay attention to first to build an online presence that accurately reflects the expertise that you want to show up with in the world. So, website, content marketing, creating content on your website, your email marketing, and social. And in case you're wondering, no, you don't have to be on all the social platforms. Instead, choose the ones where you think you can find your core audience and the ones where you can sustain a consistent presence. Like I, for example, am saying no to TikTok for now. Are you there, Laura?
I'm here. I'm
On
here.
Tik No, I mean, you're
Oh,
here. Are you
yeah.
are you on
No,
TikTok?
I'm not. And and my friend Rahaf Harfouch keeps telling me I need to get on there because book talk is huge. And I'm like, I just can't. She's like, you're such an expressive face, and I could rant on TikTok, but it it just feels like an overwhelming task. I don't
I
know why. It just feels like one too many things.
It feels the same for me. Christy Kirk, who's the VP at my company, she's in charge of client services and keeps her eye toward all the data about social channels. Apparently, obviously, in terms of the amount of time people spend on TikTok, it's way beyond the other channels. The number of users, daily users on TikTok, is way beyond the other channels. So she makes a really good case for it. If you're curious about that, feel free to email me. I could send you some of the data. But same here. Like I'm not ready for that. I don't want to do it. But if you look at bestsellers on Amazon, again, the bestsellers on Amazon are the ones who are getting tons of traction and people are talking about their books on TikTok. Colleen
Yes.
Hoover is a fiction author. I can't remember the author's name, but The Seven Husbands of Evelyn. Yeah, I can't
Evelyn
remember.
Waugh. Yeah.
Whatever the book is. Anyhow, I was in a workshop over the weekend and somebody said, well, how are these books selling so many copies? TikTok.
TikTok. Well, maybe we should do this. Maybe we need to commit to get on TikTok together. So when you said start your permission based newsletter, your email list, and grow it as fast as you can. You got any tips for us who are trying to grow our newsletter lists?
Well, it might be slower than you hope it will be. For me, the way that I've grown my list to where it is over time has been through live events. So if you have people register for live events and it's clear that when they sign up to attend that free webinar, they're also going to join your list, that
Hmm.
has been the most successful thing for me. Obviously, you can create lead magnets, so free ebooks or free assessments that people have to give you their email address in exchange for it. I would say
Hmm.
leverage the power of those in-person events. So never be on a stage without a call to action to somehow get people to convert to your list. Some people use this utility called join by text. And when they're on the stage, they say, hey, text to this number and I'm going to send you, this follow-up material, whatever. But certainly for people like you, Laura, who are out there on the road, the thing about being with a group of people at an event is there's so much power and emotion and energy and connection in the room, and you don't want to waste that. You want a way to stay in touch with those people because no matter how great a speaker you are, if those people never connect to you outside of just in that room, they're going to forget you. I don't think you're a
Absolutely.
forgettable person, but you have to take that step when you're in the room to get them to follow you on social or join your list or some other way. That's the way that you can become memorable over time.
So I think I made a mistake in the beginning of speaking that I never did that. I spent the first year speaking to probably 75,000 different people, and I didn't ask anybody to follow up or do anything. And I could not be kicking myself harder for it. So now I have people go to heylgo.com/more because lauragassnerotting.com is not as easy as beckyrobinson.com. It's a lot of words and a lot of letters and a lot of misspelling. So they go to heylgo.com/more and they can get a summary of my talk, which is kind of cool. But I'm finding that I'm getting like 15 to 20% of the audience only who are signing up, which is not enough. And I was talking to a friend of mine. She's like, yeah, she's like, that's a summary of the talk. She's like, it needs to be something about them. Like you need to have them go take a quiz. Like there's 4 questions to ask yourself. Go to my4questions.com. Like something super, super simple where they learn something additional about themselves, because everybody's favorite topic of conversation, of course, is themselves. So I haven't done that yet. And I'm going to try that in the next time I'm on stage. But I am curious if there are certain lead gens from stage that work better than others, you think?
Well, I was just coaching an author about that this morning because he was looking at the data from a recent talk, and the percentage for him was also low on conversion from the stage. And one of the things that occurred to me is like, why not just be really, frankly honest about what you hope to achieve? So, in the case of this client I was coaching, I said, what if you just say, I exist in the world to add value to leaders. He happens to talk about leadership. And I know that I'm going to leave this room and you might forget about me. But if you go to this, hey, lgo.com/more, and you put in your email address, I'm going to show up in your inbox weekly, and I'm going to have the chance uh, to share a bit of my journey, and I'm going to ask you to share a bit of yours, and I'd love to stay
Hmm.
connected. Like, I wonder, maybe that would work better.
It probably would, because the last thing anybody wants to do is like go somewhere to download a summary and then be like, oh, now she wants my email address. Like it feels a little bait and switch. It feels a little dishonest, right?
Yeah, but if you are obvious about the generosity that you hope to bring to the person, and you just get
Right.
really honest, like, I don't want you to forget about me. I don't want to forget about you. This has been a
Yes.
cool time together. Let's get to know
Yes.
each other more. And here's a way how.
And going back to what you said in the beginning, it is a way for me to show up much more authentically, right? And
Hmm.
bring value and have that generosity. And it really is sort of consonant with who I am, to be that person who's like, all right, listen, it's totally spastic of me to try to do this any other way. So I'm just going to be honest. Like, here's what I hope to achieve, right? Like it does feel it feels better. I actually like feel more relaxed even hearing you say this thing that I could say on stage. That would be much more me. And I think that just, again, that goes back to the, like, who are you for? Like, the people who don't dig that and who don't want more of me are not going to sign up. Fine. Great. They would just unsubscribe anyway, which lowers your open rates, which, kind of kills your email marketing plan in the first place. So yeah, I mean, I think that it really does go to that, like, who are you for? What do you hope to achieve? What do you want this book to do for you? What do you want the message to do for you? Yeah, I'm going to give that a try.
Yeah, I want to hear about the results.
Yeah, I'll let you know. Okay, so we only have a few minutes left. If are I would love to hear from you. Sort of what's next. The book is launched. The book is out for a couple of months now. Now you're in the post-launch period.
Yes, I call that advancing.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
It's actually a lifelong commitment to running.
Oh God, that sounds terrible. I just signed up for the London Marathon because I've done the 3 US majors, and now there's, 3 overseas majors. And the friend that I run with, she's like, I got us bibs for London. And I'm like, that means we're running London, Berlin, and Tokyo, aren't we? And she's like, yes. I'm like, so we're not signing up for one more marathon. We're really signing up for 3.
That is amazing. Way
Well,
to
but it sounds
go.
terrible. It sounds exhausting. And you saying that this is a lifelong commitment to running this book, this advancing period,
It's okay if you slow down.
my
I
shoulders
mean,
are now back up again. I was all relaxed from what you told me I could say from stage, and now I'm freaking out again.
well, here's the thing, like, it changes over time, right?
Mm,
But in terms of creating a growing audience and lasting impact, it really isn't about something that has a finish line. It's about like a lifetime commitment to the relationship we build with the people who are following us. So I've really shifted away from that like marathon sprint language more to
okay.
this like, what does it take to sustain running, daily over the long haul? And it's okay if you slow down, and it might look different in different seasons of your life. So for me, I'm trying to say yes to absolutely every opportunity that comes my way. I'm offering to do like free groups virtually to be able to share the message of the book. I've been doing a little bit of traveling when I'm invited to show up in person with groups. And I'm just going to follow those 4 commitments. I'm going to keep showing up with value consistently, giving away as much as I can for a long time. And, it takes consistent effort to be able to sell the number of copies of books that you want, and to create, achieve the goals that you want. And so just trying to stay focused on that and not get discouraged when I look at the numbers.
Yeah, I know. It's a slog. It's a slog. So, if people are interested in creating their biggest possible audience for their message, their book, or their cause, they want to increase their reach, they should pick up a copy of your book. But how else can they find you?
Sure. So you've had up on the screen throughout this conversation, BeckyRobinson.com. If you're looking for my company, you will find that at weavinginfluence.com. I am on all the major social channels except TikTok for now, right? Unless LGO, twists my arm onto that stage too.
Y'all do it. You do
I always
it.
welcome emails, Becky at weavinginfluence.com. My podcast is called the Book Marketing Action Podcast. I also host a Reach More Readers workshop, which is a 2-day virtual workshop to really walk through the content in the book. And so if you look at the topics in my workshop, they mirror the chapters in the book. So a gazillion places to connect with me, and I would always love to hear from you.
Amazing. Thank you, Becky. It's been
It
great
was
to talk to you.
fun.
I've learned
I
a lot. I have a
appreciate it.
lot to do.
Well, and we didn't even get to talk about content repurposing, so we'll have to have another conversation
We'll
on
have to
that
have another
topic.
conversation because I need to do content repurposing, and I have so much content, and I put it up once, and then I don't ever do anything with it.
Well, get on my calendar. I'd be happy to continue the conversation.
Oh my goodness. All right. I will absolutely do that. Thank you so much for your time today.
Take care.